Okay, Ian is suggesting that we get started. I'm going to, I put the link to the community update 122 in here. There's a slight change in the format. I'll speak to that in a little bit. I put the link in the chat. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So in terms of what we're running on the various networks, the versions of the nodes and all that remains the same. We're running 0924 as the observer nodes right now, and 0923 LTS as the mainnet validators. And then we are testing sort of a pre-0925 on Sandbox. That's kind of where we are. So since much of this portion of it is the same, I'm going to skip to the next one. And here I want to, this is where the format changes. There are so many pull requests that are going to be in 0925. I thought this would run into a long list. Instead, I'm going to share my screen, the GitHub screen itself, where what we did was we labeled the various PRs as next release, if they're going to be in the next release. Now, some of those are merged, some are still being worked on, and some are being tested, reviewed and tested, and so on and so forth. Does everybody, I think you should be able to see the this long list of PRs. Can somebody confirm?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So these are all the PRs. I'm not going to go into detail on each one of those. So all of these, as of now, are targeted to be released in the 0925, which we are thinking it'll be sometime next week. So that's the plan. It's been a long time since the last release. I mean, we had the 0923 LTS and the 24 with relatively smallish changes, but this 0925 is going to have a lot of PRs in it. Now, switching back to the these things. So, like I said, I won't go over all of them, but I'll just highlight a few as to what it is that we're working on. One of the pieces that we're working on is the investigation of the slashing that occurred on one out of the 10 validator nodes. And we looked into that, and it was because of the tuple space mismatch. And it was a little bit of a history to figure out like what combination really is causing the mismatch. So we took a little bit of a generative test type of an approach to see what may be causing that. And the initial debugging, what it's telling us is that it's manifesting when the try is recalculated because of the insert delete of nodes when they're sharing the common prefix. So that's something we can fix, and we are fixing right now, and that's what that RCHAin 4102 is. But certainly, while this will eliminate some of the issues with tuple space mismatch, because it is sort of a generative type of a thing, we don't know that we have caught all the conditions that could lead to that. But at the same time, this is also non-deterministic. We cannot easily reproduce this. This is something that happened over a span, this is the first time this occurred over 3 months in since the mainnet has been up. And it's occurring only in one of the nodes and not the others, even though they're all running the same code base. So to that extent, our strategy with that is to continue to watch and debug, analyze it as much as we can, try to replicate it once in a while. But what we have to think about is an error handling framework that for something like this. I mean, there are cases where we can say, okay, this slashing is valid because of this, and then you run into something like this that's sort of an indeterminate slashing. So we probably need to separate the two and figure out how we want to work with that. So, but that's one of the main things that we have been focusing on in the last week plus. The block merge spec is still being written up. The team was tied up in this slashing error and other improvements that they're doing, but block merge is what is not on the table for 0925, but it'll be in the next release. That's what's expected right now. For 0925, the main focus is the last finalized state, completing portions of it, improvements to the DAG store and block store. And specifically, we have a key value store in the, it's an abstraction on top of LMDB that's been implemented. And that's going to be used for caching the transactions and caching the state changes. And it'll also be used for DAG storage. So that's really what one of the main streams of work that's being worked on. And portions of that will be released in the 0925. The other part that's going to be in 0925 is Arthur Grief's changes. He had made two contributions. One is it's not on this document, but if you, let me switch to the other screen. So the bytes to hex method is one of the things that is a bit of a breaking change, but that's why we put that through the RCHAin process, and that's going to be released in the next release. The other part that Arthur Grief contributed was this HTTP admin API. So that's also going to be released. The other pieces we're releasing that are somewhat of a breaking change is the configuration changes to the nodes. So that's going to be released also. And let me see if there's anything else that needs to be highlighted here. I already talked last week about improvements to visualizing the DAG. Instead of having to always get the whole DAG, being able to specify a starting point where you want to look at the DAG. So anyway, so those are kind of the main changes from the code base perspective itself that are going to be in 0925. And in coming back to other items, we have completed the improvements to the CI environment. We were getting earlier some errors with GitHub failing, and GitHub didn't know even when we contacted their support as to why the tests were failing, and we didn't know, meaning the data was not available. So we reconfigured some of the parameters and how we parallelized some of the tests. So the problems seem to be mostly gone. We have not seen a repeat of those things. Seems like what helped with that is the fact that when we parallelized, the JVM memory footprint is reduced, and that has helped eliminate some of those CI issues. The SRE front, we are continuing to expand the diversity of the clouds. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had everything just on Google Cloud. Now we have quite a bit of the observer nodes, the testnet, the part of the monitoring nodes, we're moving them slowly into IBM servers. We're also, Gurinder and Ian are also exploring getting some free and inexpensive resources from Oracle. The goal with this diversification effort is twofold. One is to reduce the cost where we can for hosting, but also to increase the resilience of the network by having more than one cloud provider doing different parts of it. And certainly monitoring and things like that, you want to spread across hosts, across cloud providers, so that if one fails, you know that at least something else may be available. So those are the things. And even though these are all just Docker images, we're also trying to see how it works on the different cloud providers. So those are so it's kind of a multi-goal effort there in terms of what we're trying to do with the cloud providers. The other part of the continuous integration, continuous development stream is we are moving from Jira to GitHub slowly. And we, for 0925, we're trying to do release notes on GitHub itself. For a period of time, we'll do them both on Jira and GitHub. I mean, the thing is that on Jira, it's easy to point out to the Jira tickets that we have addressed in a particular release. That's how the template is currently structured. And on GitHub, it's easy to link to all the PRs that are going into a particular release. So what ideally we would like to do is being able to link to both the Jira tickets and GitHub PRs in the GitHub release notes, so that when somebody goes to the GitHub, they can see, okay, what was the ticket about? Okay, what did the PR do? All of that is available with a few clicks in the one place. That's kind of what we want to move to. And eventually, we probably the Jira issues will go away, and we'll have issues on GitHub. And we have the templates that both the internal templates for the development team as well as for the community that are put on there right now. So once we finish that and start putting new tickets in GitHub over a period of time, most of it will be, both the issues and the PRs, everything would be available in GitHub, as will be the release notes. So that's kind of the where we're going. And actually what you saw today with this in terms of tagging the PRs is kind of part of that, meaning what's going to come in the next release. We should be able to speak to it just from this screen without really having a whole lot of community update text being written up, though we will still have that for a period of time. Perhaps that will be there for a long time, actually. So that's what I have to say, I think. Any questions from anybody on any of this so far? Okay, and I think we have Raphael updating us on his work with ERC 1155, and he created a fill in the cells or color the blocks or color the cells kind of a game from that. Raphael, are you ready to take off?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, Rao. So I'll start with the DAPI update, and then I'll talk about this application, this web application. So I'm going to share my screen, and so I have slides. Okay, so I'll start to talk about what happened in 2020. So as expected, we launched 2 DAPI networks, one on the RCHAin testnet, the other on the RCHAin mainnet. So those networks are quite stable, but not much people are using them, but they are stable. And so we had 3 releases, and we will have another release very soon, DAPI 0.3. So if you want to get familiar with the concept of DAPI network, there was a video that was released 2 weeks ago. So check it if you want to get the explanation behind this concept that not much people kind of understand. So that's it. So what's available currently in DAPI? IP applications, which are websites, but that website that do not use the DNS or certificate authorities. So I will show you an example. Okay, for example, this is the dapi.tech website, but on DAPI. So there is no domain name. This is a simple name that is on the blockchain. And there is also the RCHAin co-op website. Okay, maybe something went wrong here, but it is also registered on DAPI. So I am connected to the testnet, so you won't be able to launch the same websites on the default configuration on DAPI. So those are websites, but that do not use the DNS. The dApps are also available, so I will show a dApp a bit later. Then DAPI also includes a RCHAin wallet. So this is the concept of account in DAPI. Maybe it should be renamed to wallet. So for example, I have one wallet. And the cool thing is that the wallets are linked to the name system. For example, there is the RCHAin co-op website I showed you earlier. And basically, you can use this name system to send funds, to send rev to anyone you want. Instead of putting the rev address, you can just say, I want to send money to RCHAin co-op. Okay. Okay, maybe I guess it does not work because this is a local name. So I will use another one, for example, hexagons here. This one should work. Okay, so what goes on basically is that DAPI resolves this name locally and finds the rev address. So you can just send money to any website, but finally, the name system of DAPI is not only used for websites. So it becomes some sort of extended name system. And so this is one of the use cases. So this was the wallet. So yes, so I'm working on DAPI full time, but I'm also developing some applications to show what the features are in DAPI and to develop some applications that cannot be done outside of the DAPI ecosystem. So I will talk about a dApp that I have developed. dApp meaning that it is a web application that only needs the blockchain to run. All the files are stored on the blockchain. So this dApp is called Hexagons. So basically, anyone can deploy a Hexagons web application, and at first you have this form that you must fill. So you can choose the number of rows and columns, and basically it will create a canvas with cells. In this example, 15 by 15. You can also set a price for one cell. depending on how much money you want to raise for a crowdfunding eventually. Or you can also set it to 0 if you want it just to be a game to play with. So the interface tells you the total amount that corresponds to the canvas being completely filled. So basically, when you hit this button, the transaction is sent on the blockchain, and after some time, this very application at this address will change and display something like it. So, so at that point, you as the administrator, you have no control over it. You cannot change the number of rows and columns. And basically, anyone is able to purchase a cell in your canvas. So in this example, there are some cells that have been purchased. And if I click on that one, for example, cell 1559, I can choose the color I want. And then this will cost me one dust, dust being the unit that we have not found a name yet, but the minimal unit of rev. So I can purchase this cell. I will use this account. I can eventually check the Roland code if I want to be sure that nothing nasty is being deployed. So then I hit send transaction, and after some time, I will see my cell with the right color. And under the hood, this application uses ERC 1155 that is being extended and reworked weeks after weeks, so it can reflect the need we have. So, for example, I will activate the development mode, so you will just understand a bit how it works. So basically, each cell corresponds to ERC 1155 token. So when you create it, the admin owns every cell, and then each one of these cells is set at a price that has been set in the form that we saw, which means that when an ERC 1155 token has a price on the RCHAin blockchain, automatically it is available for purchase. So what happens when you send the transaction here is that you purchase an ERC 1155 token that is available. So those ones are the ones that are available since Genesis, since when I launched this ERC contract. And then the next ones are the ones that have been purchased. So you see that there is no name, there is no price information, which means that they are not for sale. So this system can be extended to with, for example, a messaging system where you could send message to other people. Some game could also be built on such a system. But yes, the cool thing is that we have the ERC 1155 contract backing all this. And basically, anyone can attach metadata to his ownership. So in my example, the metadata is just the color, but you could add any sort of information as metadata. So the cool thing is that, so if you want to get familiar with how to build those kind of applications on DAPI, you can check the documentation. So for example, you have some method to identify if you want to know. So these are methods inside the JavaScript of the web application. So you can identify a user without knowing the private key. You can do explore deploys in JavaScript very easily. And the cool thing is that as a web developer, you do not handle any kind of endpoint or network settings. All of this is handled by the browser. So that's it. That's it for me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's very gratifying to see some steps towards the consensus games that I talked about in the RCast. I think that what you built is a framework that would make it very easy to take it to the next step and actually build one of those games. It's really nice. I also wanted to jump off from here with a couple of different discussions, but I want to give some other people a chance to ask questions before maybe going down those rabbit holes. Anybody else want to ask Raphael any questions or make some comments?
I had a question about why the RCHAin cooperative name didn't work, but then you changed it. Like, what are you able to just change the name of the receiving party based on? I guess I was a little confused about that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Okay, so yes, I'm sorry, I was, I think, a bit too fast. So basically, this is the equivalent of the domain name system, but in DAPI and on the RCHAin blockchain, which means that anyone can purchase a name and link some application to it. For example, the Hexagon's name has been purchased by someone and it has been linked to this address on the RCHAin blockchain.
I see.
Yes, so what I tried to demonstrate is the possibility in the wallet to send money to some existing website, but at this point we should not call them website, but just a digital identity or name owner.
Okay.
But I tried to do it with a name that I only created locally, that is not on the blockchain. So this is just the reason why it failed. It's because my wallet only wants to send revs to account that exists on the blockchain. So this is just a small demo issue.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Thank you. It was really cool to watch it all. Thank you.
For example, you could do something like this.
Okay. Raphael, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, was it fine because I was sure? Okay.
Yeah. I think your explanation in English was quite clear.
Nice. Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Raphael?
I just gonna say great job. I downloaded DAPI. I bought a bunch of those things. My only complaint is I can't sell them. I had a sell thing. I think I got some pretty good hexagons there that people will want
to buy. that one right in the middle is the best one. Excellent. So there are a couple of things that I wanted to point out. First of all, I know that people who've been vying for a communications committee have been wanting to revamp the RCHAin website along the lines of what we see with the GitHub pages. And I think that's an interesting direction. But to be perfectly honest, I really want to push us in the direction of eating our own dog food. So I would love to see the RCHAin co-op website, or at least some version of it, deployed on DAPI. And to this end, I think what I'd like to do is to invite all of the RCHAin staff and board and developers to put up just one page a bio page on DAPI. And then we can see about linking from the existing RCHAin website to those pages as a kind of experiment for expanding the RCHAin DAPI relationship, but also starting to shake some of the bugs out of the overall system. That to me is a much more interesting direction for a lot of different reasons, most of which have to do with eating our own dog food. Does this make sense to folks?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. So maybe we can have some discussion about that. It might also be fun for each member of the co-op to put up a page for themselves, if they so desire. Doesn't have to be personally identifying, but it could be linked to some like a Discord handle, for example. So that might be another thing to begin to explore this kind of interaction. And that leads naturally into something that Raphael pointed out and was a part of the original consensus game design. So in the design that I contemplated, you could select some number of cells and message them with, I mean, in general for gameplay, it's about requests or instructions to change colors, so that there would be this emerging coordination to be able to create an image that everyone can recognize and get behind. But that leads to a really interesting point, which is, I think it's really, really time to look at beginning to host the communications infrastructure on top of the platform itself. So to this end, I want to make a proposal to the community that we take the open source chat server Zulip. We could have picked any one. The reason I picked Zulip is mostly idiosyncratic. The category theory community and the scientific community and the academic community has landed on Zulip as one that they really like. And so it's one that I'm familiar with, and I know that there are a lot of really high-class people using this one. So if we took the open source chat server, and it's important that it's open source because then we can get a hold of the source and modify it, and connect it to our platform. And we want to connect it in, so the first level version of this vision is to just rip out the back end and replace it with the RCHAin network as the storage mechanism. Of course, right now with the network speeds, we have to do some caching. And so that's exactly what the RCAT server does. So my proposal is that we put together a project, a community, largely community-driven project, but with some rev to support those activities, to update the RCAT to get it to a place where it's using the latest version of the node. So it's using a version of the node that's a year old. We want to get it up to date to use the latest version of the node, and then use that infrastructure to, and rip out the back end of Zulip and wed Zulip to our platform. And this will give us some experience for some of the capabilities of the platform. It's not something you can do on Ethereum. Now, there are messaging things that are connected to Ethereum, but they are not, they're not storing the data on chain. And when we're talking about wanting to be able to have provenance for important communications, it needs to be on chain. And so I think this is a very desirable feature, especially if we can then connect it to efforts that people are making towards building a voting system. I'm fairly certain we can have this done together with an integration with various voting systems in time for October. I think this is a very doable, very achievable thing. And then we have something to show off. Taking it a step further, since it is open source, we can not only control the back end, we can control the front end, which means that we could modify posts so that they could be promoted with Rev. And or other tokens of the kind, for example, that Lamoette demoed today. So this begins to realize the kind of vision that we had with Scenario, and it puts it within striking distance of a very small amount of work. And then to put a cap on it, if we do it in such a way that it can be easily stamped out, right? So, we make all of our code open source and people can grab the code and modify it for themselves. Then it becomes possible for other communities to grab this solution and use it for their own community organization. And this begins to talk about what I was, begins to demonstrate with running code what I've been saying about the blockchain and coordination. Effectively, what a lot of communities need to be able to do very rapidly is to incentivize particular behaviors, right? So if they can, if you can put some rules around when certain communication events or communication events that are related to actions in the real world are rewarded, then you can, so for example, let's say that some 16-year-old comes up with a brilliant idea for how to clean up the oceans. I'm picking this example because it's something that actually happened. And then a community begins to organize around this idea. Again, this is something that actually happened over the last few years. Then they could grab they could instantiate an instance of this communication server and populate it with their community and begin to tokenize rewarding certain kinds of behaviors, rewarding sort of in-system communication acts, as well as rewarding verified out-of-system activities. And now we have an extant, example that people can point to and say, this is one tool amongst many, many, many that RCHAin provides as a mechanism for using blockchain to coordinate from the ground up, grassroots kind of community coordination. So I have a couple of more points to make, but I'm going to stop there because that's a lot to digest and see what people think about this.
Yeah, let me see if I've got this right. So a community comes along and creates a Zulip server on RCHAin. They create their own community token. And with that token, they can do things like credit people's posts or sell that token for whatever purpose, fundraising, etc.
Exactly.
So you can promote a post with your community token and sell this community token also so people can raise money for the project and have their voices heard, do voting, etc.
Exactly. And that's just a couple of examples of what you could do with such a system. I think, as someone pointed out in a conversation yesterday, it's a mouthful to say Zulip on top of RCHAin. So we could just call it an RChat instance. So does that help? Or does that answer your question, Ian?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question.
I'm also thinking that, the main thing we need to be able to send to each other are capabilities. and
Sure.
How this I guess chat system organization would represent our database of capabilities.
Yep.
To some extent.
It could be expanded in that way. Here, there's nothing special about Zulip in particular. So you could use Rocket Chat or a whole bunch of others, but we just need to do it one time. And once there's one example and people understand the power of the approach, then lots of people will come along and take their own do their own take on this approach. So so that they can reskin it, they can use a different chat system, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots and lots of changes to be rung on this particular kind of thing, but we just need an example, and it sort of furthers all of the goals that the co-op has been sort of founded to address. It helps us dog food our technology. It helps build a communications infrastructure that's on our technology, and it helps exemplify or provide concrete examples of what we mean when we talk about blockchain as a coordination technology. So is that making sense?
Yeah, we're creating identities and a way to communicate between them. And this is necessary no matter what we do, but having that communication channel is the essential thing, and we can we can communicate in Rolang as well as whatever else, and we can encrypt our communications.
That is exactly right, and there's no reason that there can't be a smooth continuum from human agency to other kinds of computational agency. So there's so many different ways we can take this. So there was a few other points, but I just want to make sure that anyone else might want to weigh in.
So Zulip is React, Python, and JavaScript. If we have anyone with those skills, how can they contribute to this effort?
Well, we have a meeting in about 15 minutes to start talking with some of the community leaders about this idea, and I want to pick it up in Discord and try to get some vigorous activity around this. I think it's going to be really important, and this leads on to one of the things that I think is going to be important about our market, our go-to-market, is not just that we can point to differentiating examples of utility of RCHAin, and this would certainly be one, but also that we have a fun application that is like a jukebox in the sense that it requires Rev in order for important, entertaining events to happen. Essentially, what you want to do is you want to start soaking up Rev as a part of engaging with some of these applications. CryptoKitties was a great idea along these lines, right? It effectively soaks up ETH, binds it to an entertaining experience, and this is what we need to do as a part of marketing. We need to create utilities that actually require Rev, apart from just the basic transactions on the platform. And I think this is a step in that direction, but it's just like, it's really hard to sell a house that is bare bones, right? If you take a house and you just remove all the furniture and everything, these rarely sell. And that's why when people sell houses, they go ahead and have them tricked out. They have them staged. And we need applications like this that will both provide people with examples, but also begin to bind Rev to the utilities that are that are identified by those applications. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that analogy of the selling houses and staging the house. That kind of explains it in a great way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and it's connected to something that you and I, Daryl, were talking about yesterday. That there's this long-standing conversation within the cooperative about whether or not the co-op needs to be involved in building dApps. And I think there's a fairly knockdown argument here, right? A fairly compelling argument that is basically the co-op is going to depend, for its survival, it depends on us being able to grow the transaction volume. And that part, if you look at the business model, has always been there from the very beginning. All of our documents talk about this basic aspect of the business model. The survival of the cooperative itself depends on the transaction volume. Which means that if the co-op is going to wait for the community to build dApps, then the co-op survival is dependent upon external agents, external events, things that are outside of the co-op's control. And from a business perspective, that's just nonsense. You can't do that. You have to be able to have some control over your own survival.
Yeah, I mean, I think Apple realized this, very early on in their business. Like, they couldn't just build a computer. They had to build the stuff, the fun things to use for the computer.
That's right. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. So while the co-op doesn't want to build all of the apps in the ecosystem, it wants to build enough of them to ensure that the curve associated with the transaction volume is on a hockey stick. So that's why I think that the co-op must engage in a certain amount of application building. And here, what I'm trying to do is to create a collaboration between the community and the cooperative, so that working together, we can influence the likelihood of the survival of the co-op. Any questions, thoughts, comments about this idea?
Yeah, it's not only a way to provide sustenance in that, where, there has to be fees where there's expenses.
Yes.
We're providing, a model, hopefully, which is sending programs among each other, which we can't control. We're just giving a basic way they can communicate these programs.
That's exactly right. That is precisely right. And the nice thing is that the framework is broad enough that people can take it in lots of different directions. So people are more interested in agent-based communication as opposed to human-to-human communication can move it in that direction. People are interested in community organizing, can move it in that direction. And I know Steve Ross Talbot, for example, is very interested in the Polis system, which helps with the collection of sentiment, right? And so there would be some kind of AI engine also connected into the framework to help begin to identify patterns in the expression of sentiment. So there's lots and lots of different ways the whole thing can be modified or shaped. But that happens once we have the basic elements in place. And I think we have enough of the basic elements in place now that as a community, we can make this happen. Unless there's anything else, I think that would be a great note to end on.
Greg, I have one thing one update for the community. Leah Thompson from Galgon Crypto, she reached out. She would like to interview you and about the RCHAin project. So she's an avid crypto enthusiast and influencer. She'll learn about RCHAin through Ashton Edison from Crypto Coin Show. He already interviewed you a few weeks ago. So we already set the interview for July 6th at 12 p.m.
Awesome. That's great. And you dug up some interesting information about Leah.
Actually, let me just put it in the chat, the link, so everyone can. Yeah, she's from Seattle.
Oh, that's great.
So North Bellingham, actually. She's
Oh.
North.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
Bellingham is a nice community. That's where.
so I just posted the link in the chat about Leah.
Fantastic. Thank you for bringing this up. It's I think we need to get more and more people. We need to reach out to more people, and maybe as a result of building out this communications effort, we can get more community leaders involved in giving interviews and talking about what differentiates RCHAin.
And also the updates, because a lot of people don't know what's happening lately.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Speaking of which, I guess we need to begin hosting the China community debriefs. So, and I think those are going to happen on Thursdays at 5 a.m. Pacific time. So that'll be fun. All right, folks. Thanks to all. I hope everyone stays safe, and we'll talk again on Friday or next week.